I'm getting real sick of hand traps in Yu-Gi-Oh! I've talked about it before, but we have crossed a new level of toxicity. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is your host with the most, AvrielR32 here, and destroy the ever-living hand trap boo-boo stain, off of that like and subscribe button, as we are only 10 subscribers away from 1,600. Guys, I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'm feeling much better now that I've taken a couple days off to chill out, get the things figured out with my car. It's going to be taking a little bit longer to get that car accident resolved, but we're doing okay. We're feeling great. Maybe not because of alcohol involved, but guys, regardless, I really do appreciate all the love and support, all jokes aside. I wanted to talk about this 60 card pile of, okay, I'm past the 1 minute mark, the 60 card pile of dog shit that has permeated the Yu-Gi-Oh community and got second place at a regional. This is Primite, Fiendsmith, Summon Skull with white dust on, the proudest of them all BS, with, I want y'all to count it out, pause the video if you need to, 30 fucking hand traps. Look at this baby back bullshit. We got Fwalos, Perulias, everything out the yin yang. And I've talked about before in the past about how hand traps need to be hit. I'm going to talk about it again because I did not think going into the new year of 2025 that we would see 30 hand traps in a deck, regardless of the pile. Like, I get it's a 60 card pile, but if I just had to guess off the top of my head, having 30 hand traps in a 60 card deck, you're looking at, if I had to guess, a 97 and 98% chance to see one hand trap in your opening hand. And let's say that it is 98%. I'm sure someone's going to correct me in the comments. I don't really care. Even if it's 95%, it doesn't matter. Out of 100 hands, let's say 2 to 5 of them don't have a hand trap. And at that point, like, that's just bad luck. Like, you may as well go play the fucking lottery at that point. But this got second in, I can't even pronounce the country's name. It begins with a K, but it got second place. Here's the thing. I wanted to talk about this because of the fact that this should go to prove more than ever before that hand traps need to be hit in some way, shape, or form. There's a lot of people out in the community who are like, yes, Ash Blossom ruined the game. It was the first of many other hand traps to come because, back in the day, Effect Veiler and DD Crow didn't see a whole lot of play. Things like Ash and all that need to be banned or ban every single hand trap. I'm not saying that every single hand trap should be banned, right? Because I do get that they are a part of the modern game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Now. I mean, hell, the fact that we're playing 30 in here should speak for itself. And you do need hand traps to an extent, like Nibiru, because it does balance out the game in a sense that the opponent cannot just play a 60 card pile of engine and just be able to make these unbreakable boards to where you really don't have any sort of way to stop them. Nibiru is very clutch in that regard. But when you get to the point where you can play a 60 card pile with 2 engines that together are still pretty small, and you fill up the rest with something like Desires, and then you play a bunch of fucking 3-ofs, I don't think that anyone can sit here and say, yes, this deck is not toxic. Because we know that the Fiendsmith stuff needs to be hit much more than the Primite stuff, right? Like, the Primite engine itself is not that big. Like, when you look at this deck, you're playing 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 Primite cards. Minus the vanillas, I guess you could argue that they're part of the Primite engine. So, okay, fine, fucking 12. But they kind of more complement the engine overall than just being for, like, Primite targets. Obviously, the Primites can get them out, like with Lordly Load, Drill Beam, or, Roar, things like that. They do make Drill Beam live, but it's primarily like the Ether Barrel, the Drill Beam Roar, all that good shit, the Lordly Load, whatever. The fact, though, that a deck like Fiendsmith Primite hand trap pile of dog shit can get second place at a fucking regional is absolutely ridiculous to me. And it honestly kind of floors me. Because if you are opening 4 hand traps and, like, say an Ether Barrel in your opening hand, you mean to tell me that you win just because of that? Like, sure, if you could make the argument, well, Avery, if the opponent, in that case, you open up 4 hand traps and Ether Barrel, you summon the Ether Barrel, use the effect, and the opponent imperms you, you're in a bad spot. But I would argue as the counter argument, you're not even in a bad fucking spot. Because you're just going to sit on 4 cards in your hand that are live during the opponent's turn, and then all of a sudden a 1600 beat stick becomes like an Egyptian fucking god card that can't even be ran over. Like, it's ridiculous. Oh my god. So, look, what are some things that we can do to kind of curb back hand traps? Looking at this pile of dog water, I obviously think that Shifter needs to be banned. I'm going to preach that in every single ban list video that I continue to do and have done in the past. I have said that Shifter needs to be banned because it's just basically a turn skip. Older hand traps like Lancia, DD Crow, and Effect Veiler, I don't really think need to be hit because they're kind of more niche. Now, I say that, and then when you're talking about niche things, you could almost kind of throw in things like Ogre, Bell, Mourner, and Ash. Maybe the Mulch Army is to much less a degree, but I would argue with things like Ash, they are much more generically good. And maybe you could argue that Veiler is also generically good because it's not once per turn. Same thing with Imperm. But see, the issue that I have with something like Ash compared to Veiler or Imperm is that Ash Blossom inherently stops so many cards in the game because of the 3 different things that it can stop. Similar argument with Ghost Bell and things like that. Whereas Veiler and Imperm specifically stop monster effects. And I don't think that Konami is going to make a ban list that hits hand traps where they say, yes, we're going to put Veiler and Imperm at 1, because then you kind of get into the luck sack factor category. But I don't think anyone can sit here and say, yes, when I'm building a 40-card Yu-Gi-Oh deck, I am not considering 3 Ash Blossom as slots, and then I'm just building a 37-card main deck. And it ties back into this argument that, granted, it's from a decade ago, but Konami has never spoken on the ban list to any sort of extended degree outside of this from over 10 years ago when they posted on their blog where Kevin Tuert was talking about how the ban list is constructed. And the reason why that this came about over a fucking decade ago now, 13 years ago now, Jesus Christ, I'm old, is because the March 2012 Forbidden and Limited list got so much hate. I mean, you think Yu-Gi-Oh gets hate now? Ladies and gentlemen, go look back at old videos on YouTube where like people like Capital G, MCO40 and all them were talking about the fallout of the March 2012 ban list. What you had with the March 2012 ban list was windups and injectors. And back then, they were both the top decks of the format. It was a 2-deck format, similar to what we have now with Rise on the Malice. But with windups, what they were able to do was that they could hand loop you for 5 cards, all 6 of your cards, because you drew 6 starting off back then. If they opened Pot of Avarice, they would loop Wind Up Hunter and Zemites. They could loop you for 5 cards. And if you open up Pot of Avarice, they could loop you for all 6. And so what ended up happening on that March 2012 ban list was that we saw decks that were tier 1 but were getting power creeped out, like Tengu Plants, get absolutely destroyed. And Wind Up and Injectors didn't get any hits, but they had already power creeped the format. And so Kevin Tuert had to come out with an article explaining how the ban list is created, talked about why, Spore was banned and Glow Up Bulb was banned, Trap Dust Shoot was banned, all these things to help ease the anger and sentiment that people had towards the list, because the list did fuck all for the format at the time. And so one of the biggest things that he talked about was that we don't want players feeling like they're basically pigeonholed into playing certain cards in their deck no matter what deck they build. And he gave the example of how, like, before you even started building your deck idea or your deck strategy, you knew you were going to play Pot of Greed, Graceful Charity, Raigeki, Sinister Serpent, maybe Painful Choice if it was legal, Raigeki, Dark Hole, the list goes on and on, Ring of Destruction, so on and so forth. So it ended up getting to be like 20 plus cards in your deck that you were putting in there before you actually started building your main core strategy, whatever that was for the time, because archetypes really weren't a thing way back in the day. Not until, like, we started getting the 5Ds era stuff like Black Wings and Junk Monsters and Synchrons, things like that, right? And so I feel like we've entered into an exact same position where when you are building a Yu-Gi-Oh deck, doesn't matter what it is. It could be something table 500 like Argo Stars, as much as I love that pet deck, Exodia, something meta like Rizal Fiendsmith, whatever. You know that you're going to be putting in 3 Fualos, 3 Ash, 3 Veiler, 3 Imperm, 2 to 3 Nib. Like, the decks are built for you at this fucking point. I guarantee you that the player who got second with this at this regional did not look at a Primite Fiendsmith deck and say, okay, I have a Primite Fiendsmith deck that is 40 cards, and I'm going to play this 40 card deck. No, they realized, wait a minute, both of these engines are small AF. Why not make it a 60 card pile since it's consistent anyway, and Primite gives you an endless feed of resources through constantly getting back Drill Beam, constantly summoning vanillas? Just make it a 60 card pile. Who cares if you open up 5 hand traps? You're going to stun the opponent out of the game anyway with your hand traps, or they're going to end their turn because you open double Fua and they don't want to give you a bunch of draws, or like, you know, say double Perulia or a Perulia plus Fua, whatever. It's like it becomes a turn skip anywhere to where the game comes back to you regardless. Man, I'm so sick of this shit. We need to be hitting these hand traps, especially the Mulch armies, because they are kind of max C 2.0, and I feel like because Perulia and Fualos are getting reprinted so quickly that we could see them get hit. We need to have some kind of hit. I understand things like Nibiru have to exist to stop combo decks, but Jesus Christ, having 30 hand traps in a deck makes my blood just fly out of my skin. Like, this is insane. Guys, let me know what you think down in the comments below. We need some kind of fucking hit to hand traps, because even as a Rizal player, I'm sick of having to play set 15 to 20 hand traps in my deck before I even start constructing my deck. Guys, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.